Coming up on the special edition of the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, Edgar and I will be talking all about the May revision. Edgar, it's one of my favorite days of the year. We'll give you all of the details about the governor's general fund budget proposal and the impact on public education.
The ACSA Legislative Lunch Break starts now.
And it's a couple of minutes after 3 o'clock. We welcome you on a Wednesday to this special edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, along with Dr. Edgar Zazwata, ACSA's Executive Director. I'm Naj Alikhan, ACSA's Senior Director of Marketing and Communications. Welcome. We are honored to have you with us here for our special edition, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, to talk about the May revision. Edgar, how are you?
Good. I was wondering, you just answered my question. I was going to ask you as we were coming on if you still love budget day as much as you used to. I know you probably get more excited about budget day than anybody here at ACSA. I know we'll have to pull up at some point. I know those old pictures. I know we made fun of ourselves.
There's a scene.
That's not the one I was talking about. I asked for it. I think there's also some other great ones of you, not me. Of you. There you go. You see, we matured there, right? I hope we've had all these iterations. I personally like our setup now, Naj, more than those, just because I don't have to be in the same room with you anymore. So like that, we get a little bit of distance. We're still able to go back and forth here. So
nobody can mistake us if you and I are in two completely separate rooms.
You're gonna have to count at some point. This is a math. Given that it's budget, and, we focus on the numbers. I next time we do budget, I want to know how many budget broadcasts we have done. No, some of the years is going to be iffy because there's in the midst of the recession and whatnot, we would have a special budget, and then not to mention all of the COVID budget. So maybe I don't want to know that, but
I that last picture that we showed was actually the last budget broadcast that we did pre-COVID.
Okay.
So that was
before social distancing went into
before
place.
Social distancing.
We've never been in the same room again.
Exactly. Folks, we're going to have our budget experts on the show in just a couple of minutes to talk about what the governor talked about, give you some in-depth look on the impact on public education. Let's go ahead and go through some of the data right now from the governor's news conference earlier today. He presented the details, and then the Department of Finance also gave us a little bit of information. The proposed general fund budget is $321 billion. Now, this is key. We are now facing a budget shortfall of $12 billion for the upcoming budget year. And for context, the January budget proposal had a forecast of $363 million surplus. And then revenue from January to April exceeded expectations. It was $7.9 billion in the black, above projections. However, a weakened economic outlook and stock market losses contributed to $16 billion in lost tax revenue, $5 billion right now in proposed spending cuts in the next fiscal year, the majority coming from health care spending and a withdrawal from the rainy day fund of $7.1 billion. Edgar, let's switch over and talk about the education piece. And there are what the Department of Finance calls, quote, notable adjustments to the Prop 98 guarantee. There's a $4.6 billion proposed reduction in Prop 98 funding levels in comparison to the January projections. This maintains a proposal to underfund Proposition 98 below the constitutionally guaranteed minimum. The May revision also includes a cost of living adjustment of 2.3%, Edgar, which is down from the 2.43% in the January budget proposal. To fully fund the LCFF, the May revision uses $481 million from the Prop 98 rainy day fund to support LCFF costs in 25-26. And this is key. This is a key budget maneuver right here, Edgar. The budget proposes deferment of $1.8 billion in LCFF funding from June 2026 to July 2026. So just kind of kicking that can down the road to the next fiscal year. Edgar, you had an opportunity to hear some of the data, listen to the governor. Your initial thoughts on what we heard.
No, great rundown as always, Naj. You do a nice job of just summarizing the big headlines there in terms of the numbers that our folks need to know. Before I jump into my reaction, I know this is usually your job. You're giving, give shout outs to our viewers, some of our loyal viewers. I'm going to give a special shout out today because I saw he's on there, not just because he's our new boss, but I think it's well deserved. Dr. Gerald Kemp, who we just swore in as our new ACSA president. I know we'll hopefully get a chance to chat with him here on the lunch break at some point soon, but I know he officially takes his seat as ACSA president on July 1st, but as an ACSA tradition, we just swore him in last week. So shout out to Dr. Camp, who I know joins us regularly here. You said it yourself, Naj, and I think the numbers speak for themselves. We've been foreshadowing this, that it was interesting because we saw revenue numbers tricking above what the estimates were, right? But as we've been saying with the conversations with John Gray, we've been talking about this for a couple months, that wasn't going to tell the whole picture, because you really had to think about what had happened in the first part of the fiscal year and then what's really happened since January. And I think the governor and his team made it pretty clear that the big headline was that the budget situation has gotten worse since January, right? Like that is the main takeaway, that we're not as in a good a position as we were in January. Now, with that said, and I think this is where it gets somewhat complicated, I think for us on the education side, it's good for us to have some context. Like we are protected in many ways because of the statutory requirements under Prop 98, because of the formulas in place that dictate the minimum amount of funding. And I know we don't always talk about this on the other non-education sides of the budget, but I know this will be something you'll hear from our team in a few, that there's a lot of pain on other parts of the budget, right? Where some of the headlines about reductions to Health and Human Services, to Medi-Cal, having to share some of that cost with folks who are accessing services, them drawing things back, right? And I think, as the governor says, this is going to be the key talking point here, I think, over the next couple of weeks, is that we don't see, usually when we talk about a tough budget, we're looking at, okay, what does this mean? Are we seeing reductions? Are we seeing cuts? That none of that applies for us on the education side, at least directly, right? What we are seeing is that there's going to the word you're going to hear a lot is uncertainty. All the obligations that they're paying this year, like the COLA, which, mind you, is lower, as you pointed out, is lower than what it was projected at in January. We kind of knew this. We heard that from school services and others over the last couple of weeks. But that's also districts planned on the 2.43, COLA, right? They're going to have to revise their estimates. That's going to mean programmatic changes, right? So there's that. Then they are, even with that lower amount, the state, and you'll hear this from Yvonne and Cordell, the way that they're paying for this, which is kind of the scary part, they're meeting their obligations this year. But one of the ways that they're meeting their obligations is paying for ongoing funding obligations with one-time dollars from the rainy day fund, from some of the one-time sources. So I think, and the governor was transparent about this, that there's some structural problems, not necessarily this year, but in the out years. And we know we have the song and dance every year. Things could change. We talk about one thing and then the budget situation changes for a variety of reasons, and that could be the case. But as we stand here today, they are worried about what happens after this year, after this adopted budget. There's some changes here, and our team is going to dive into it. Now, with that said, we always have it, though. Like, I think just given relative to where the other parts of the budget are experiencing pain, even some of our friends and partners on the higher ed side, they're seeing some more direct cuts. The CSU, the UC system, we're not seeing that on that end. I think we are appreciative. We're appreciative, in terms of some of the discretionary decisions. Again, we're also fortunate. We fought for this, right? Some of those protections we have in place with Prop 98 are there. Now, as always, some of the devil's in the details, and our team will jump into that.
Let's go ahead and bring in our guest right now. Yvonne Carrillo is ACSA Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations, and Cordell Hampton, ACSA Legislative Advocate and our budget expert. Yvonne and Cordell, thanks for being with us here on this special edition of the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Yvonne, let me just ask you right off the top. Talk to us about the budget structure and how you see things now that the governor has wrapped up his news conference and we get more details from Department of Finance.
No, I thought you two contextualized it very well, and you hit on a number of these pieces, is that there is certainly a level of creativity, and maybe that's putting it lightly, that is utilized to make all these numbers balance and all these things work. So you mentioned the deferrals. You mentioned also the underfunding of Prop 98 as well, utilizing one-time funds to pay for ongoing commitments, drawing down completely the Prop 98 rainy day fund. And so some of this stuff is concerning to us, particularly the underfunding of Prop 98. We know very well there are immediate needs that our schools have. And so the administration's maintaining of that budget proposal is really concerning to us. It was a top priority for our association when all our members were up here during legislative action days to try to get that reversed. We've been trying to make this very clear to legislative leaders. This is unprecedented and certainly troubling to us. But additionally, these budget this budget framework certainly comes with a high level of risk as well as we enter, the out years. Again, the using one-time monies to pay for ongoing commitments, that's a shortfall that they have to address in the coming budget year. So uncertainty is a good word. Risk is another one. But I think it's also important to point out that some of what we like is built upon this as well. So in terms of us just needing to be strategic in how we're advocating and talking about things, because you pull back in one area, it has impacts on other areas of the education side of the budget as well.
Hey, Cordell, one of the things that we always talk about, that this is a step in the process, right? Like the governor, as I know we were on a briefing today, and the governor's staff reminded folks that, hey, like they propose things, the legislature is the ones who fund them, right? So they have a piece of this equation here. Where do you see are going to be the biggest tension points? Where are going to be the areas of this budget or this budget proposal that you think the legislature would either have some pushback or that, they may have a different perspective on it?
Yeah, I think for a lot of our legislative members, both in the Senate and the Assembly, are going to have a lot of tension, a lot of heartbreak over what we've already talked about here, which is the underfunding of Prop 98 by $1.3 billion. I think for, a lot of our folks know that it's hard for us to do more with less. So that we've continued to advocate not only this year, but every year when the budget comes around. I think something else that we're also going to look at too is the transitional kindergarten proposal as well. As you guys know, the governor proposed in January $1.5 billion for the add-on for the lowering of the ratio from 12-1 to 10-1, and then also added additional dollars for the TK add-on for students. Something that was both mentioned by LEO and the legislature is that they're a little skeptical of that amount, thinking that the dollars allocated for those programs doesn't match the enrollment that we're seeing in those programs. And so I think that's going to be a continued pressure point. I think something else that we're also going to have to look at too is expanded learning opportunities. I know some members in the legislature have expressed concern if that transition from tier 2 to tier 1 in regards to the $435 million proposal would be sufficient or too much. I think we're also going to continue to see a little scrutiny from the legislature around ethnic studies proposal as well, if the governor was going to plan to fund that in his May revision. So I think there are going to be more points throughout the next couple of weeks, now that with the May revision, that we're going to get more into, that we're going to be hearing more from both the Senate and the Assembly on as we go forward these next couple of weeks.
Cordell, I just want to follow up because I think there's two issues there I saw in the chat, and also things that I was going to ask you. So just to put a pin on it, I know Neri asked about TK norms taking effect. So like the governor's moving forward with all of his proposals as it relates to TK, correct?
Correct. The governor is moving forward with all his proposals regarding TK, which is some revised numbers in relation to some of the new budget updates that we received earlier today.
Yeah, and then second, I know you noted it, so I'll just underscore right now. The governor confirmed this part. The governor is still proposing, or is not proposing, to fund ethnic studies at this
Correct.
time.
This is news to a lot of us. As you guys may recall, in January, there was an exclusion of having TK in his proposal, which shocked and created a lot of confusion among the field in terms of whether or not to move forward And so something we kept an eye on was to see if there was going to be any inclusion of funds, but there wasn't. There was no ethnic studies proposal being proposed by the governor at this moment. And so I think this is the governor looking to the legislature to come together with a proposal for him to consider.
Yeah,
but
and I think just
that we
on that
included
point,
in our budget advocacy efforts in terms of trying to get clarity, from the legislature and the governor's office early, so we can provide more clarity to you guys in terms of how to proceed. So again, with the exclusion of the ethnic studies proposal not included in the May revision, I think we're still left in this kind of weird transition period of we're getting closer to the end of the school year. We're starting to plan for the next school year, but there's nothing included to show.
Edgar, if I may, the only thing that I would add on there is that we've been as Cordell has been stated, we've been clear in terms of where our advocacy lies in terms of pushing the state to fund that. And we're happy to report that in the conversations we've had with legislative leadership that they have identified this as a priority as well. So it just appears that this is just about positioning the governor, pushing this into the legislature's court, saying you all use it shit on this, but we're hoping that the legislature will continue to stand with us and hold the line here and make funding ethnic studies a priority.
Yeah. So the takeaway from both of what you both said, I know we'll get this question a lot. I know as Cordell's talked about, this makes planning, as we've seen this dance before, right? A difficult one, not just on ethnic studies and a variety of issues when they're still trying to figure out what they're going to do here as the next fiscal year starting. This is not the end of the story. So folks shouldn't see, hey, the governor didn't propose to fund ethnic studies, so that means it's not going to be a requirement. The legislature may have a different perspective there. So.
Correct. We still got another month to go before the budget gets finalized. So we're going to wait and see until the final budget gets passed.
Yep.
Yvonne, let me go back to Neri's question about the UTK norms for AIDS, 10-to-1 taking effect or still follow the current 12-to-1. Given the difficulty in filling openings. Obviously, we've talked so much about educator shortage here, not just in the state of California, but throughout the United States. I think it was interesting listening to the governor talk about the funding aspect and being able to check the boxes on that ratio number as they work to fully fund UTK this coming year. What's your look on this right now as far as the funding piece to transitional kindergarten, knowing that that ratio number is something that is going to be impactful for every school district in this state?
Yeah, no. Shifting to the 10-to-1 ratio is a priority of the administration and of legislative leadership. So the shift to 10-to-1 is certainly still going to happen. So no changes on that front. But I think what we're seeing with the governor's proposal is an acknowledgement of the significant costs that are associated with building up universal transitional kindergarten. And so we're happy and certainly support the governor's proposal as it relates to not only fully funding the transition to UTK, but also funding the lower ratio. And it'll be a priority of ours to make sure that this money is maintained, because with or without that money, again, state leaders have made it clear that they're going to shift to this 10-to-1. And so we want to make sure that these funds are there to support it, knowing that funding doesn't solve everything, knowing doesn't, necessarily deal. Having your funds that doesn't necessarily deal with your facility challenges or deal with your ability to find a staff to meet these needs. But with that said, we know that these funds would go a long way in helping support transitional kindergarten programs. One last thing I'll mention on this, Naj, I'm sorry, just as it relates to staffing, just because this question came up in a couple emails earlier today, is that there are no changes to the classroom size cap. So with the shift to the 10-to-1, the 24 pupil class size cap is maintained. There's no adjustments on that front.
Cordell, I know that there's some changes that are being proposed to the discretionary block grant. I think you alluded to those. Can you just recap what are they doing there?
Yeah, with the discretionary block grant, the governor and January have proposed $1.8 billion. We are seeing a slight reduction in that to 1.7. But overall, what we've confirmed with the Department of Finance is that it will continue to be fully discretionary. And so that's something that we'll be looking more into Chobo language to see what the details are. But it confirmed from Department of Finance will continue to be fully discretionary at $1.7 billion.
And I know in talking to you and Yvonne earlier that's another place where we could see a different perspective from the legislature, right? Because we know that there's some legislative leadership there that may want to put some more strings on those dollars and think that, things like having it be directed to the school side or putting parameters on who gets it. So I know we've always this has been part of our advocacy as well, but that's another one we'll keep an eye on. Thank you.
Cordell, let me ask you about this, because when we were talking earlier, you had used a term that I had never heard before, and this is the Proposition 98 split. Can you talk about what that is and what is the impact of that this coming fiscal year and further down the road?
So something interesting that the governor's proposing in his May revision is this Prop 98 split. One end of the split being TK through 12, but then the other end being community colleges, right? Grades 13 and 14. And what we've particularly with his proposal related to transitional kindergarten is currently under the law, community colleges can also have been receiving these increases. It's increases in funding related to transitional kindergarten. And so what the governor is proposing this year is to make sure that all of the money that's being added on to for this shift from 10 to 1 and fully implementing transitional kindergarten, those funds solely go to TK through 12 on the one end of the split. So that way, community colleges are no longer receiving funds for this new add-on grade. Something that we want to be looking out for is that this may obviously raise concern among the community college folks under Prop 98, as that there's going to create a reduction in funds for them. But it's something, we serve this new age group, and so it's something that we're going to want to look to protect to make sure these additional funds continue to stay in more TK through 12 space. According to the budget document, it's about $492 million ongoing in the TK through 12 space. So that's something we're going to look forward to fighting for.
Naj, I think one of these days we're going to have to throw out a Prop 98 quiz to our viewers here to see who the real budget nerds are, right? It still makes my head hurt there.
You know who I'm actually disappointed I have not seen on the chat, and maybe I've just completely missed it, but I don't see Sheldon Smith on this
he's
chat
retired.
today.
He only shows up when
John Gray is on. That's all it is. Yes, exactly.
Hey, Yvonne, 2 questions for you. One, I think an easy one. I know Maria Thompson asked about support for facilities modernization. Anything in there in the budget so far?
Yeah, one thing that's notable on that front is a couple years back, there were some general fund dollars that were built into the budget to support school facilities. We see a pullback of some of these dollars that have yet to be utilized. The Department of Finance is saying that they were set to expire later this year, they got clear indication from the field that they weren't going to be utilized, and so they're pulling it back. These dollars were specific to fire impacted communities from a couple years back, not from the most recent set of wildfires. But in terms of just the broader school facilities program, no changes as it relates to the recently passed school bond.
One more question for you, Yvonne. I know we've talked about COLA, and I think just to underscore, I know this is something we talk a lot, that's a significant piece, right? Where while some of these things are protected, these are adjustments, especially in the era of declining enrollment, that this is going to have an impact on districts. Just so we're clear, that dropping cost of living adjustment, what does that COLA apply to?
So it applies to the local control funding formula, but it applies to categoricals that continue to live outside of the LCFF. So this includes special education, school nutrition, adult education, to provide a few examples. But in years past, we've always seen the COLA applied to state preschool as well. And notably, in the May revised proposal, they are proposing to not have COLA applied to state preschool. So that's concerning to us, and certainly would have impacts on LEAs that operate state preschool programs.
Cordell, let me ask you about any new information that you have related to the BASE grant.
Yes. So related to the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, so you guys may remember back in January, the governor had proposed to lower the UPP, the unduplicated pupils threshold from 75% to 55% to allow more districts in Tier 2 to move to Tier 1. With that proposal, there's been a slight increase in overall funding from $435 million to $515 million. But what's really notable and something that ACSA has been fighting for the last couple of years, alongside the Small School Districts Association, is increasing the base amount for small school districts, right? For that $50,000 base amount. I'm happy to say that in the governor's proposal, he's going to double that amount. So he's looking to increase from 50,000 to 100,000. And so this is something that we've been continuing. This is something that we pushed in our January budget letter, and something that we've met with a lot of legislators, both in the Senate and the Assembly, on to try to make sure that, and echoing the same things that you guys have mentioned to us, that $50,000 is insufficient in order to even just hire someone. And so this is a step in the right direction in terms of trying to ensure that Tier 2 districts are a little more stabilized.
Yvonne, here, as we get to the bottom of the hour, I know one of the things we always mention that, this is the beginning of the conversation that, we're going to dig in. I know you and the team will continue to, to capture and then relay any finer details that may come out in this, trailer bill language, or through some of our briefings with the staff and the governor's office or in the legislature. But just from your perspective, what are you looking out for? What's kind of the next steps? Where do things go from here?
Yeah, the immediate next steps is making sure that we have all the facts as it relates to what's being proposed by the May revise. So that trailer bill language that you just mentioned, it has been released. So now it's combing through all of that and understanding the specifics of these proposals that were described at a high level during the governor's press conference and in the documents that he had released this morning. But then it's in a really quick turnaround to make sure that the legislature is hearing from us. The legislature, both houses, the Assembly and the Senate, both have an important role in this process, and they have the ability to identify their priorities and push back and fight for adjustments to this May revised proposal. So certainly we're going to be advocating to them directly and strongly, and we'll be doing this with our other statewide partners and LEAs up and down the state to make sure they hear from us on the pieces of the May revise that we like and we want to make sure are maintained, but that they're also hearing from us where there are concerns and what the implications of those proposals are. But your voice, the field's voice in this process is critical. So be on the lookout for continued correspondence and information from us. But the greater number of you that are communicating directly with your local legislative offices on how you would utilize these dollars, why these dollars are important to you, the better. So please engage in this process with us.
I do want to point something out, Edgar. The last time, and this is Cordell's second time on the show, right?
Second?
This is only the second.
Okay.
And the first time he was on, we were getting a lot of feedback from our great board member, Catherine Castleberry, about how we needed to do some work to beef up Cordell's background. I don't know if you've noticed.
Okay, stepping up his game back there. All right.
What is to the left of Cordell? Can you actually see what that is?
I see a picture.
Right?
I can bring it closer.
Yeah, Cordell, you may as well bring it closer since Edgar's having a hard time figuring it out.
Oh no, I did not catch that.
We decided to see how long it was going to take you to notice that. So that tells me
my
are
oblivious
very
and bad eyes did not see that.
I'd have my heroes close by. So
there we go.
I'm still waiting for that to come out in the magazine or GQ or something.
Yeah,
I've missed it. I keep looking for it. It hasn't come out. So.
I know. Don't worry. By the next time we have Leadership Summit, we'll have it.
Sacramento.
We'll have
there we go.
Absolutely. Yvonne Carrillo, ACSA Senior Senior Director of Policy and Governmental Relations, and Cordell Hampton, ACSA legislative advocate and our budget expert. Guys, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Folks, we've got lots to tell you about today. A lot of promos for you. We want to remind you that we're not only live right now on YouTube and Facebook, but now we are also live on LinkedIn. So if you can't watch us on either of the other two platforms, LinkedIn right now, for all of you professionals, we are broadcasting live on LinkedIn. So for all of you watching us there, welcome to that. We also want to tell you, Edgar, coming up on June 3rd is our ACSA Leadership Classroom. We've got legendary basketball player and broadcaster Jay Billis as our guest on the Leadership Classroom to talk a little bit about leadership from outside of the world of education. But what he did talk about was the importance of educational leadership. Take a listen.
The whole reason to be in the education business is to help young people and to help them achieve whatever their hopes and dreams are. When you can take young people that are all different, they may be at different stages of their development. Some are ultra high achievers from the jump. Others reach that later. And maybe they won't get it while they've got you. That happens, but they will later. And what you do and how you do it will affect them for the rest of their lives.
So that is coming up June 3rd, our ACSA Leadership Classroom. That's our video podcast and audio podcast with the legendary Jay Billis. That is coming up June 3rd. Also want to tell you about the ACSA Summer Leadership Institute, Edgar. That is coming June 23rd through 27th. Oh, it starts on my birthday, Edgar. Mark that down. Over at the University of La Verne. It is titled this year, From Surviving to Thriving, Reclaiming Joy in School Leadership. For all of our educational leaders who are just getting into the business, that is the Summer Leadership Institute. We've got a QR code for you there.
I know people say that this event, I hear it from a lot of members that this is the seminal event as an ACSA leader when they were site administrator, that the highlight of their ACSA journey going to this conference. So definitely, folks haven't, worth checking out.
Yeah, go ahead and register for that. Learn more and register for that, ACSA.org/professional -learning. Folks, if you like what you've seen here on the ACSA Legislative Lunch Break, we invite you to subscribe to us on YouTube and like us on Facebook and LinkedIn now as well. When you do, you'll get instant alerts when Edgar and I are going to come on with breaking news and our special editions. Then, of course, our Wednesday broadcast, live and interactive Wednesday broadcast. And if you have great stories happening in your school communities, we want to tell those stories too. Go ahead and send in your news releases, your talking points, and your photos to our EdCal editor, Michelle Carl at mcarl@acsa.org. Edgar, we've provided a lot of information. We've had Cordell and Yvonne on here. There's one word that I took away from Yvonne when he was talking, and that was creativity. Yeah, that's the first time I think we've used creativity to address the budget. But your thoughts, especially after listening to both of the members of our team.
Yeah, creativity is a nice way of saying that when there's uncertainty, they're trying to find ways to make this work. And and I think Yvonne said some of the things that we may have some concern with. At the same time, it's part of the structure that also goes on some of the pieces that they're keeping this together. So I think it's a fine line. So first, gratitude to Yvonne and his team and Cordell. And, as we say many times, we're very well represented. Our members are very well represented in that building across the street. And we're going to be involved in every single one of these conversations as they go to finalize a final product. So we're in good hands on that end. And then two, obviously, like we started this saying, we've done this a number of times. We've seen all kinds of budgets. We've seen those where we have cuts in front of us, where we really need to make a push. We've seen those in some of the post-COVID years where there was excess revenues and we were thinking about how all this money, federal, state, that we're going to use. Obviously, this year's a mixed bag with could be worse. We're not seeing that impact this year, but we have to wait to see what's going to happen here moving ahead. So I think the one piece that I think is going to be the takeaway, that the uncertainty, I think folks have to use that vantage point as they're making decisions. They're at the local level of what the state situation and what the local budget situation may be here over the next couple of years. So not easy, as always. Our folks having to plan not only for the current but for the long term, and balancing those needs. And we'll as always, we'll stay on top of this. And as this evolves, we'll make sure to communicate this out to our members through the variety of platforms that we have.
Absolutely. Folks, thanks so much for being with us today here on this special edition of the live and interactive ACSA Legislative Lunch Break. Edgar and I are back on the air next Wednesday, 1 p.m., our regularly scheduled show. Until then, have a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.